Watch him eat, and while he's eating, talk to me while he eats and ask me what he's doing. What's he doing? He's eating. Now watch him eat. What's he doing? He's eating. Play your drums. Yeah, I don't get it either. Oh, and before I get into this, I'm reviewing the big box set of 6 Halloween shows. There's also a 3 CD release that I will talk about in the video, but had only the 3 CD release been released, if all 6 shows were not released and they had only released the 3 CDs, which is the Halloween show itself, as much as I love certain parts of the Halloween thing, I think Hammersmith Odeon, which is from the winter, same band, the winter version of this, like 4 months later, I think Hammersmith Odeon might have jumped up to maybe 4 or 5, and the Halloween 77 would jump down to 6 or 7. They wouldn't switch places. They would still both be in the top 10. But I think because I am reviewing the entire 6 shows of Halloween, that had to be number 2, because they're all ridiculous. But had it been versus the Hammersmith Odeon box set versus the Halloween 77 3D box set, I think Hammersmith Odeon would be higher. It's got the King Kong. It's at the little house. It's just, the band is even somehow a little more muscular and better at that point than they are here. Wouldn't shift a lot, and that's not great in a top 10 of this caliber, but that's probably what I would do if things were different. As it is, let's go on to number 2. What's up, people? My name is Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, currently ranking and reviewing every single Frank Zappa album released after he passed away in December of 1993. And out of the 55 I deemed worthy of being ranked in review, we are now on number 2. Number 2! Counting down from 55. And yes, you know this already because you can read. It is Halloween 77. Where to start with this release? It was released, I think, in 2017, and right before Halloween, of course. Comes with the mask, as always. And I don't know how many CDs this is, because though I eventually did burn most of this onto CDs, this is what you get. You get a little USB port with all 6 Halloween shows from the New York City Palladium in October of 1977. 2 shows on the 28th, 2 shows on the 29th, a show on the 30th, and then the big Halloween show. All on here. Oh, Punky. Did I show the other side? Yeah. Oh, Punky. So that's where it is. I did eventually burn them all to CD, though I left off tracks that I will talk about. But it was a lot of CDs. So anyways, it's a lot of music, 6 shows. And I think I referenced this in an earlier video that this could arguably be the best 6-show run Frank ever did. Yes, the set lists are nearly identical in all 6 shows. In fact, they are identical in 4 of them. And then in 3 of them. And then in 1 of them, you get an extra encore song. In 1 of them, you get 2 extra encore songs. In 1 of them, the 30th, you get 3 songs in the beginning to open up, 2 of which made the Baby Snakes movie. And then you get some deviation in the middle with dropping off probably the best song in the entire run, leaving that out of 30th, but replacing it with a couple other things. But I'll talk about that later. But anyways, it is just, even though it is the same songs night after night after night after night, it is a phenomenal 6-show run. The guitar solos, the playing, the band, the sense of humor, Patrick O'Hearn, the set lists, just ridiculously amazing. I think the only other possible 6-show run you might be able to put up against this, maybe Halloween 78. Probably any random run of shows in November of 74. I might put that up against this. There possibly could be a run of shows in 82, maybe in July of 82 that could be this out there, but I don't know if he did 6 in a row. But I mean, that is how incredibly good I think this 6-show run is. The band is Frank's probably Frank's second best band in my opinion after the Fall '74 band. You have Terry Bozzio and Patrick O'Hearn are still on bass and drums, left over from the previous year, and at the peak of their powers at this point. O'Hearn especially. O'Hearn, I think, is the star of the show, of this entire box set, other than Zappa. What O'Hearn does night after night after night in different ways and different funky styles. At one point, there's a little Walk This Way Aerosmith reference. Like, I mean, he is just ridiculously funky and talented. You have Tommy Mars and Peter Wolf on keyboards. I don't think I give enough props, or not enough people give enough props to Peter Wolf. Absolutely amazing. Tommy Mars' style and his scat singing and just the sound of his keyboards tend to like dominate and overpower others in one's mind. But Peter Wolf, ridiculous. Ed Mann on percussion. And then Adrian Belew, another, I think, underrated side musician, singing amazing guitar sort of pyrotechnics, an amazing guitar solo every night in Wild Love that is like a highlight of every show. Yeah, I don't think I missed anybody. And then Frank. So an amazing band. The energy is high for these shows. There are moments in certain sort of quieter, like when Frank has sort of is the only one playing and he's kind of soloing, you can hear, if you listen carefully, the audience just yelling shh the entire time, like just not shutting up. But it doesn't seem to faze Frank at all, and he obviously feeds off it at some point. I think it's the second 29th show when Frank sounds like he did a bunch of blow before the show, which we know doesn't happen, but he must have had a lot of caffeine and a lot of nicotine before that second show, because he is talking a lot and he just seems like he's amped. But yeah, just night after night after night, ridiculous shows. So I'm going to go through the set list of the first show, the 28th. Yeah, before I go through the set list, in trying to figure out, like I wanted to try to figure out which show I thought was the best of the shows. And I think I narrowed it down that like the first two shows, the 28th shows, are probably the weakest of the six. Not bad in any stretch of the imagination, but just possibly the weakest, and I'll explain why. Though they each have what may be the best single performance of the run. It's between a song that appears, the same song that appears in both the 28th early and the 20th late, might be my two favorite performances of the entire six show run. So they have that. The first 29 is really good. The second 29 is even better. 30 is even better. But then 30 has some things that detract, that kind of bring it down a little, because Frank overindulges the audience for a while, or overindulges himself, to be honest. And then the Halloween show delivers on all fronts, does not disappoint. But in looking at that and deciding which one I thought was the favorite, I do think it's one of those last three, and I kind of go back and forth between which one is. There were kind of four key songs that to me pull one up or bring one down, with the addition of the October 30th show having a bunch of extra songs that both hurt it and helped it, but then in adding those extra songs they left off probably the most important song, which then hurt it. So probably my favorite show might be Halloween, with 29 second being my second favorite, and then 30th being my third favorite, and then going backwards forward. But anyways, these are the four songs that I think make or break each show. And I don't mean break, because none of them are broken, but rank them from like an A to an A+++++. So you get early Torture Never Stops in every show. Every show opens with Peaches and Regalia, into the Torture Never Stops, except for the 30th. I'll get to that in a little while. And that's your first chance where Frank, just obviously, second song, he's soloing, he's stretching out. Each of these solos has a very distinct minute or two where he's playing a little lighter and breezier and airier, and there's a little more effects laid in that are like sort of, just layering on top of what he's playing. And then at some point in each of the solos, he's like, and he just digs in and it gets a little fiercer and harder. None of these sort of reach the majesty of the Winter 78 tour and those tortures. Rat Tamago, you can't do that on stage one, but they're all good. I think the Halloween is probably the best. It is the heaviest of them. It's the most aggressive. I wrote it's the heaviest, it's the most aggressive. And so I think Halloween by that time you're leaning more towards what it would be in 78. But then there's also like the second show, late 28. The ending of that is ferocious and almost metallic, and it is really good. And then there is one, the second show, the 29th of the second show, really kind of funky. O'Hearn comes in with some really strong bass lines. And then the 30th is just, has this really strange ending that just kind of falls apart, and it doesn't feel like it's going to end, but then it does. And even though it sounds like it's a mistake, it all kind of works. So all great solos, all very dichotomous and, you know, in the same sort of light and airy and then ending heavy, but just really, really fascinating solos. And then you got, after that solo, you have Trying to Grow a Chin, City of Tiny Lights, which always has some good guitar work from Ballou, and Frank ricks off some good licks every now and then. And then you get Pound for a Brown, which is the next sort of meaty song. And of the Pound for a Browns, I think the Halloween one is by far the best, but there's a little added bonus, which is why it makes it the best. But other than that, I think it's the 29th, the second show, which is just O'Hearn. So every Pound for a Brown is O'Hearn takes a bass solo, then Mars solos, and that's it. Or as you move on, in like I think in the early shows, Mars does his solo first, and then O'Hearn solos, and then Frank switches it as the shows go on. But the 29th in particular opens up with what sounds like it's going to be a bass solo, but then it goes into a Mars solo, then it goes into a bass solo, I think, or something like that. There's really a lot of interplay where you're not really sure who's soloing at any point. O'Hearn plays Walk This Way at some point. Mars quotes Inca Roads at length in his solo. It's just a really good sort of, it's a really nice, balanced, almost more of a conversation type thing. All the other solos are good. We get some good Mars scat. Bosio is particularly effective in the early 29 show. The one on the 30th kind of has a more somber, serious vibe. And then the Halloween one eventually gets turned. Oh, the 28th late show has a police car jam where somebody's pushing that toy police car that says, "You're under arrest, you're under arrest." You can see it in the Baby Snakes movie. Well, that's used in the late show on the 28th. They use that and they kind of jam over that for a while. That's pretty interesting. But the 31st, the Halloween show, you get a really funky O'Hearn bass solo, then you get the Mars solo, and then you get the part where Mars then does his, what's he doing? He's eating. Watch him while he's eating. I'm asking what he's doing. What's he doing? He's eating. We get that part. And then when Pound kind of ends, Frank invites Roy out on the stage to do some stuff, and then he conducts the band, and then it ends up into that, what I will call the AC jam. If you've seen Baby Snakes, the movie, there is a point where Frank conducts the band, and he's like, A, C, hey, you know, and he's conducting them, and it goes chaos, and Roy's making a bunch of noise. And that's indexed as a separate track on my USB, on my little thing right here. It's called, what is it called? It is called The Demise of the Imported Rubber Goods Mask, but it's essentially an extension of Pound for the Brown. So I'm giving the 31st extra Pound for a Brown points for that awesome thing. So anyways, after Pound for a Brown, we get Bobby Brown Goes Down. Usually some sort of explanation in this. Frank does some talking. Then we get what I think is the highlight of almost each of these shows, and that is Conehead, the instrumental version, the guitar solo version that you can hear just a little bit of on Baby Snakes the movie. It's that dun-dun-dun-dun. It's a very repetitive O'Hearn sort of bass line, which sometimes O'Hearn sticks to it, sometimes O'Hearn does it, with this really neat Adrian Ballou kind of guitar figure over it, and Frank just solos. And the first 28 shows, Frank's solos are insane. They're like 9+ minutes long. They're aggressive. They're exploratory. They're interesting. It's like a conversation with Frank that I don't ever want to end. And the rhythm work from Bosio and O'Hearn in both of these is ridiculous. I think two of the highlights, if not the two highlights of this entire set. Just phenomenal. The 229 solos on the early and late shows are much shorter, but they're still pretty interesting. And then the one on Halloween it's a longer one. And it is kind of weird. O'Hearn again is very aggressive, but it's probably after those 228 shows, easily better than the 29 solos. Another good 8+ minute solo. In my book, the longer Frank plays, the better. Very seldom does Frank play too long. And then what is really the centerpiece of all these shows? Oh, so then after Conehead, you get a Flakes, you get a Big Leg Emma, which is such a great choice. You get Envelopes, you get this. There is a deviation in the 30th, which I'll get to later. You get Terry's drum solo. In the Halloween show, I think during his drum solo is when he stops and he goes, okay, I think I'm going to do this now. What's he eating? Watch him while he's eating. What's he doing? He's eating. And Bozio does that. Disco Boy, Lather, and then Wild Love, the monster that is Wild Love. And Wild Love consists of a Peter Wolf keyboard solo to open, and each solo eventually starts to sound like Wolf, but it starts off, some start aggressive, some start moogie, some start light and airy. Like Peter attacks each of these solos in a completely different way. And I think 2 of the times it kind of doesn't work and he kind of stumbles out the gate. The other 4 times it's magnificent. Then Ed Mann gets a solo. Then they shift gears over what is a pretty straightforward little boogie, kind of a light vamp, into this da-na-na, da-na-na. And then Baloo solos over that, doing a lot of Crimson type elephant noises early on, and then kind of biting down and going into a really big solo. During a couple of these, I think it's during Halloween, Frank steps up and starts soloing. He starts soloing during Ed Mann's solo and does a little riff, and then he starts soloing during Baloo's solo. He's playing rhythm guitar during Baloo's solo, which is just ridiculously amazing. But then after Baloo's solo, it stops and Bozio plays the opening drum beat to what would become Yo Mama, but it's not Yo Mama, it's the Squirm, which was released on a lot of bootlegs prior to being released on Bowling, on Sharon, Charon, Charen, on Transfusion. The Squirm solo. And so each of these Wild Loves starts off with the Squirm solo, and Frank takes off from like that Squirm motif. And then by the following tour, it would become Yo Mama. But it is that, just that opening drum beat by Bozio. The shortest one of these is almost 23 minutes. The longest one, the Halloween one, is 30+ minutes. The Halloween one is just mind-blowing. Frank's rhythm work during Baloo's solo is ridiculous. The Squirm is ridiculous. It's like, I wrote down in my notes, magical, patient. You get a definite, what feels like a Yo Mama build at some point. It's definitely not that chaotic at any point, but it's just like epic. And it doesn't really peak as much as it's just like, it does all it needs to do, and then it goes back into the closing part. It's just ridiculous. And then several of these songs, so after Frank solos, they finish out Wild Love with the dun, 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 and they play that little part. In 1, 2, 3, all but the second show at the 29th, there's quite a lengthy soloing by Frank once the song is completed before they go into Titties and Beer, where Frank's just rip playing as fast as he can. In the Halloween one, it turns into a straight up jam. And then the jam is so powerful that when they segue into Titties and Beer, only the keyboards are there and the rhythm section is not. And so it's like a dun, 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 and then the drums come in, and it's just it was a botched segue, but it works beautifully. One of the little things that make this entire set ridiculous. So yeah, those 4 songs kind of make each show worth checking out, and you get all of them but Conehead 6 times. Conehead you only get 5 times. But on the 30th, okay, let me finish out the set list, then we'll tell you what the 30th is. So then you finish off with Titties and Beer. Black Page number 2 with a lot of audience participation. Early on, Frank is just having people dance. He has one guy get on the stage and be a cheerleader. And then as the night goes on, he's inviting people onto the stage. Jones Crusher, the segue from Black Page 2 to Jones Crusher is always fantastic. Broken Hearts Are for Assholes. Punky's Whips to close out the set. This was another one of those. I was going to compare the guitar solos, but they're all just pretty excellently, consistently strong guitar solos. O'Hearn is pretty funny in a lot of these. He's got some really good one-liners that only appear in one of the shows, or you maybe appear twice, that are really funny in Punky's Whips that kind of make each one worth checking out. Same with Titties and Beer. In fact, there's a Titties and Beer where it might be the third or fourth one when Frank is like trying to go to the Warner Brothers route where, what do you know what you want me to do? If I sign your contract, I want you to do this to the Warner Brothers. And Terry's like, yeah, you can almost hear his exhaustion. Like, oh my God, what? Yeah, tell me. We're going down this road again? Okay. And that's also kind of funny. And then the encores are always Dynamo Hum, Camarilla Brillo, Muffin Man. The Muffin Mans are consistently excellent. In one of the shows, they throw in San Bernardino. For the Halloween show, they throw in San Bernardino and Black Napkins. Black Napkins is phenomenal. But the 30th, here is what is different about the 30th. And you know that the first 3 songs, or at least the first 2 songs, were chosen for the sake of the movie Baby Snakes, because the Baby Snakes movie was filmed during these shows. You get Stinkfoot to open, which works incredibly well. Stinkfoot is a really good opener. I was kind of tired of it for a while. I don't know why, but it works really well. Oh, I was tired of it because in 76, it just got used way too much. That's why. But here, it works, and it's a good opener, and it gives Frank time to kind of play some not too aggressive guitar, but warm up a little bit. Really, really good. But then I think the only reason he included Stinkfoot is because he really wanted the Poodle Lecture to be on in the movie. The Poodle Lecture was not, the Stinkfoot and Poodle Lecture were not a part of what this band was doing during this run of shows. But here it is on the 30th. And I don't ever need to hear the Poodle Lecture again. So that's like, ugh. And then Dirty Love. And that's another song. I think I could hear every band do Dirty Love. 2.5 minutes of just great, simple, kind of rock and roll, right? So that got added at the beginning of the 30th show, and then they go into the same set list. Peaches, Torture, Tryon City, Pound. No Bobby Brown. No Bobby Brown in this one, so that's a bonus. I Have Been in You. But then you get the world premiere of Dancing Fool, which works. It is... The intro is dun, 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 dun. Don't know much about dancing. Just this really like basic keyboard, like going back and forth between the 2 chords. And Frank's like, don't know much about dancing. Then it kind of comes in a little bit harder for the choruses. And then they go into the second verse, and Frank wants them to redo one of them because they don't have it down. And even before they start, Frank's so, you guys sure we did this once in rehearsal? You think you're gonna have it? Remember your choreography. So this might be the best Dancing Fool ever. And then they do Jewish Princess, the debut of Jewish Princess, and that's all I have to say about that. I left that off of my tape. When I burned this to CD, I kept the Dancing Fool on. I left the Jewish Princess off because I don't ever need to hear that song again. Even the earliest version ever, if not the only live version ever. I'm going to stop right now. I think this is the only live version ever. That is the only live performance of Jewish Princess. So it gets props for that. It's better because it doesn't have any kazoo or obnoxiousness, but it's still, I just don't think, a very good song. But it is a little more bare bones. And I guess being the only performance ever, I'm glad it's released. So you know what? It just went up in my book upon realizing that. Though I think I knew that anyways. I just don't like the song. But then what you get after that is this is where Conehead would usually appear. You get King Kong. You get the only version of King Kong in this run. It is the King Kong that can be seen in the Baby Snakes movie. So you get the Bruce Kaufman trombone solo, the human trombone solo. He invites Roy out. You get the police car jam where he pushes the police car. And they do that over and over again. It's as seen in the movie. So that's interesting. But I don't think it's better than any of the Coneheads, mainly because we're lacking a Zappa guitar solo at this point. That goes into Terry's a drum solo, which would usually follow, right, envelopes, if I'm not mistaken, would usually follow envelopes, but instead it precedes envelopes. So you get King Kong, Terry Solo. No, then you get Disco Boy. Then it goes into Envelopes. Then we get what is probably the most boring 6 minutes of this entire thing, a Halloween treat with Thomas Nordig. Thomas Nordig does some hand magic. He asked Peter Wolf to describe it. Peter Wolf doesn't do a good job, so he asked Roy to describe it. It's not that interesting. It kind of doesn't work. Then they go into Leather, Wild Love, and they finish off the regular set. And they throw in a San Bernardino as an encore, as an extra bonus. But yeah, so the 30th actually kind of went up a little because you get the world premiere of Dancing Fool, which sounds like no other Dancing Fool. It would come back in Winter with a Vengeance. And then The Only Jewish Princess. And it kind of sounds exactly the same, just minus all the sort of studio overdubs. But yeah, phenomenal. Like, my complaints are about the things I just talked about on the 30th, but I have nothing else. Like, there's not a bad song. I don't like Bobby Brown, but I can take Bobby Brown in this following, following a pound for a brown and the amazing 45 to 50 minutes to kick off every show. You almost like, I'll give you a Bobby Brown since everything else was so amazing. Too much talking in I Have Been in You. So when that pops up, yeah, there's too much of that. We don't need that. But how often does that appear? Only once, right? During the Halloween, during the 30th show. So the 30th show has a bunch of stuff that anyways, yeah. That's my opinion. It's great. It's an awesome set. The 31st show probably is the best show. There is a 3 CD box set that is just that. It is phenomenal. It is great. Yeah, I highly recommend this. I've talked for way too long on this, right? It's my number 2. Shortly, we're going to do my number 1. But let me know what you think. The sound, I think, is pretty good. I think I have a tolerance for sound that other people don't based on just bootleg tapes throughout the years and all that kind of stuff. But I think it sounds phenomenal. The only thing that I would complain about is Ed Mann's percussion is maybe buried too much in the mix, especially during his solos. I think if you listen to a band like Mo, they have a percussionist and he's mixed so much higher in the mix that when he solos, it feels like an integral part of the solo instead of just kind of buried and you're like, what is happening? I'm just going to listen to Ahern instead because I can hear him better, or Bozio. That would be my only complaint. But other than that, a ridiculously amazing 6 shows by Frank Zappa, Halloween 77, my number 2. Let me know what you think. All that stuff. Subscribe.